Chapter 32 Graham and Bouncer Private Eyes. Graham, where did you put the battery charger? Asked Bouncer. I think it's about where you left it. I am positive of that, Bouncer, replied Graham. Okay, where do you think I left it then? Pleaded Bouncer. Bouncer was just a little worried. He was aware his phase shifter was running low on power, and he would either have to shift back into vehicle mode to recharge it or find the battery charger. That's a better question, Bouncer, but I am still not too sure I can help, replied Graham. Graham, I remember you went through that process of tagging everything when we came back from Mars. Do you think you tagged the battery charger? Well, Bouncer, I think you may well be onto something there, mused Graham. I'll have to get the tagging records. Give me a second. Rather than a second, in reality it took around an hour to find the tagging records, but find them he did. Bingo! The tag code is number 1765. Great, so what do I do with that, Graham? Bouncer was getting even more agitated. You plug that number into the tag locator and bingo, it'll show you where the item is. Even though Bouncer was very dubious, he proceeded nevertheless to do exactly as Graham had said, and no more than 35 seconds later beeped where the battery charger was. Woohoo, Graham, I found it. Ahem, coughed Graham. Sorry, we found it, said Bouncer as he cracked a smile, realizing Graham had very politely told him to be respectful of everyone's input in locating the battery charger. Bouncer? Yes, what do you need? Well, don't you think it would be more fun and certainly easier to simply shift back into vehicle mode and recharge that way? Well, it would have been, but we found the charger now. Bouncer beamed like the dog that found the butcher's scraps. As Bouncer recharged his shifter, Graham set about the task of deciding what they were to do next. Delhi had safely got the bulk of the solarium off planet, so all they needed to do was work out, or guess, what on earth Sebastian would want to do with the solarium. Graham? Asked Bouncer. Yes. Do you think they would have to experiment on it? On what, Bouncer? On the solarium. Do you think they would have to experiment on the solarium to work out what they could do with it? I mean, up till now it didn't exist, did it? Well, it did exist, corrected Graham. It's just no one knew where it was. Okay, that is a fine hair you're splitting there, Graham, but don't you think I'm right? Well, it would make a great deal of sense to experiment on it, find out what it can and cannot do, so if we presumed... What? Is experiment, where, or rather how do we find out where Sepulchre would do such experiments? It sounds like we are going to have to go back undercover, as Private Eyes, Graham, replied Bouncer hopefully. The next day Graham and Bouncer headed back to Solar's Towers in order to try and locate Sebastian, or if that failed, gain entry to the tower and try and find any suitable experimental locations. It was going to be tough, but in all their adventures Graham and Bouncer were only getting better at being detectives. They had the tools, the ability, and they were desperate to know what Sebastian had planned next for the solarium. Arriving at the towers like some weird déjà vu, both Graham and Bouncer looked at each other as if to say, "Okay, what now?" This time, rather than trying to covertly gather intelligence from the outside, they had decided to take a more straightforward approach and gather intelligence from the inside. This would mean some form of disguise, and like every great movie they went for repairmen. After reviewing the logs from their first visit, they had worked out that there were some normal residences on floors 9 to 15 that were rented out on lease. These would have cable TV, internet, and phone, and would all be fair game for some social engineering. With a tool chest in one hand and a shoulder bag each, they walked up to the shiny, gleaming entrance of glass and stainless steel and proceeded straight to the front desk. "Hi, we are here for Mrs. Smith in 455, said Graham confidently to the desk assistant. Okay, give me a couple of seconds," they responded. 1, 2, counted Bouncer, smiling. The desk assistant looked up with a "That's about as funny as a tsunami" look on their face and went back to searching. Reading the situation well, Bouncer ceased the social commentary and looked at the ceiling. "Did you say Smith in 445? Asked the assistant. "No, 455. replied Graham. Oh, I'm sorry, I think you must have the wrong address. Smith is in 445. The assistant looked happy now they had the upper hand of the cynical trade workers. Oh, okay, replied Graham. May we go on up? Yes, of course. The assistant passed them workers' lanyards and showed them to the elevator. As the elevator doors shut, Graham turned to Bouncer and said, That's the social engineering bit done. Let's hope the intelligence goes just as well, hey? Defo, replied Bouncer. Walking down the hall from the elevator, the boys scanned for 445 and found it within 5 minutes. Tapping on the door, they hoped for the best, that no one was in, and they could pick the door lock and walk on in. After 3 more knocks, they were quite convinced. Graham ran a heat scan, which showed nothing whilst Bouncer prepared the door pick. 3 rattles, clicks and whirs, and the door popped open and they walked in. So far so good. Pulling up the building floor layout on his terminal, Graham compared their current location to that of the Sepulchre's server room. They were 1 floor down, and 1 room to the left. They could not have hoped for a better position. So, Graham? Asked Bouncer. Yes, Bouncer? How did you know to ask for Smith and 455? Ah, that was pure luck, Bouncer. What do you mean? I saw a letter in the bin, next to the front desk, said Graham. So you only had a plan seconds before you said it? Bouncer was nearly coughing the words out. Yup, said Graham. I thought I'd wing it. Wing it? Bouncer was looking worried again. Anything could have happened, Graham. Relax, Bouncer, my plan A was a good one and we'd have managed. But as soon as I saw the letter and the floor number, I knew we were onto a winner, so I switched plans. As Bouncer reeled at the possibilities of how it could have all gone wrong, Graham started work on the hack that would tell them potentially where Sepulchre would take the solarium for experimentation.